So I'm just sat here. I apologise for the unusual camera work. Behind me, by the way, is my giant 9-foot pink flamingo that I won at Alton Towers a month or so ago. I say win, I'm not really sure whether it was a win, because what the fuck do you do with a 9-foot pink flamingo, which is why it's sat here. But I'm kind of a bit flummoxed about this Serena Williams tennis thing. I heard Serena Williams's tirade of vitriol at the umpire because he'd made a sanction, and apparently the case is that had she been a male player there wouldn't have been such a sanction. I find that quite eye-opening if that is the case, because if they're not clamping down on that level of vitriol, calling him a liar and a thief, and it was just really over the top, if they're really getting away with that, then surely that is a pretty serious issue. But it seems to me it's as if, like, there's a suggestion from a number on the tennis scene that this is a double standard, right? Because the male players apparently aren't getting policed as much. And I can believe that might be true because these double standards exist. I've noticed it in cycling. There was a case a year or two ago where one of the female cyclists, as she crossed the line, put her arms in the air in the way that the guys do a lot of the time, and she got penalised for it. And that was clearly a difference in how that's being policed across men's and women's cycling there. But I find it hard to see that as sexism, because the men aren't competing with the women. It's separate competitions, and separate competitions have always had different rules and being policed in different ways, just the same as different football leagues in Europe are policed in different ways to different stringencies, and that's what you notice when the players go and play in other competitions. So I'm just not really convinced by that. And couldn't you make that argument either way round? In fact, one of the interesting things on the BBC article, which I will link, they showed the statistics for the entire US Open tournament, and what it showed is that the men had got far more court violations. The male players had got far more court violations throughout the tournament than the female players. And really then you could make a case, couldn't you, that, well, then that's sexist against women because they're not taking women's tennis seriously. You know, they're taking men's tennis seriously, or perhaps they're holding men to a higher standard because they just think that women are hysterical. And, well, you couldn't hold women to the same standard, could you, because they're not capable of controlling their emotions. It just seems odd to portray it as sexism, because you could just so easily make the argument that it's sexist against women, whichever way round it was. And now there's another controversy with this Australian cartoon where effectively what has happened is this cartoonist has portrayed Serena Williams as an angry black woman, which apparently ties into the angry black woman trope. How you portray, riddle me this fucker, how do you portray an angry black woman without portraying her as an angry black woman? I don't know whether he should have white-faced her and made her sound eminently reasonable, but I just think, well, you folks, you know, effectively what you're saying is there are some subjects that are simply verboten. You cannot make a cartoon about them, right? You cannot comment on them, because just to do that would be racist, even if really what you're portraying, it's a cartoon. It's going to be a bit caricatured because it's a fucking cartoon. He showed the same guy had done a cartoon of one of the male players who'd spat his dummy out on the court only a week or so ago, and the guy who made that cartoon showed, look, I did exactly the same thing with a white male player, and nobody had a fucking problem with that. It's just, we're disappearing down this hole now, I think, where if you do the same thing, if you actually do the same thing, it's racist. And we have these situations where effectively, like I say, men and women, maybe the female players are being policed a little bit more stringently with the rules, but that isn't a bad thing, isn't it? Isn't that what you would fucking want? You could have the male players saying, well, this is sexist because they're taking the rules seriously for the female players, whereas for us, you know, they're not taking them seriously. They're allowed my opponent to get away with things which they wouldn't have allowed him to get away with if he was a woman, and so that's unfair to me. It's just bizarre, really. It's the difference between highlighting a difference and that difference being sexism. And it's always in the same direction, isn't it? Okay, that's what I wanted to say.